Okay, so we've been talking about different kinds of cycles that the Earth goes through, and so now we want to talk about biogeochemical cycles. So this is going to be how does the solid part of the Earth interact with the atmosphere, and then the hydrosphere, and then the biosphere. And so our first biogeochemical cycle is the rock cycle. And so we mentioned earlier that, for example, you could start with an igneous rock and then subject it to weathering and turn it into sediments, and then those sediments could be transported to an ocean where they could settle down and be cemented together into a sedimentary rock. And then we said that a sedimentary rock could be subjected to heat or pressure or hot fluids, and then that could change it so that it turns into a metamorphic. And then we said that a metamorphic could be completely melted, and when it resolidified, it would be an igneous rock. But then we also said that there were all sorts of other ways that this cycle could work. For example, you could start with a sedimentary rock and then weather it. And then when it's cemented back together again, it would be another sedimentary rock. So there's all sorts of different kinds of pathways in the rock cycle. Okay, so then our next one we want to talk about is the hydrological cycle. And so where does water come from and where does water go? So water is going to, let's say it comes out of volcanoes and then it goes into the atmosphere. It then can condense into water, and it could go to areas where it's very cold, and it could be frozen. It could land in the oceans. It could land on the land, and then it could either go underground as groundwater. It could flow on the surface as rivers to the oceans. It could be absorbed by plants, and then the plants could transpire it back into the atmosphere. It could evaporate from the land or the water back into the atmosphere. The water could soak into the lithospheric plates, and then when those plates are subducted back underneath the continents, then that water could be released and it could come back out the volcanoes. So notice how water is recycled by the land, by the air, by the oceans, and by life. And then we've also got the carbon cycle. So where does carbon dioxide come from, and then where does carbon dioxide go? So we mentioned that, for example, carbon dioxide can come out of volcanoes. It can then go into the atmosphere. It can be rained out of the atmosphere. If it lands on the oceans, it could then be precipitated as calcium carbonate, and then it would form limestone. The limestone could then be subducted back into the earth, and then it could come back out the volcanoes again as carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide could be taken in by plants and then converted into oxygen. Carbon dioxide could mix with rainwater to make acidic acid, and then that acid could cause erosion of rocks, for example. So again, there's lots of places where carbon dioxide comes from, and then where carbon dioxide goes. Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how have humans affected Earth.